Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious about what this is or you've got a bit lost. Welcome, everyone. I'm Chatty. This is my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter, and I am going to be chatting away madly to you about what I have read in October. I am just managing to squeeze filming this in before we hit December. So I'd quite like to have my October books not judging me anymore, and make room for my November ones to sit here, while hopefully I don't take a month and more to talk about what I've read. No, just be a month. Anyway, let's try and pin the waffle down. So on this channel, I do not edit my long videos. It is one continuous shot. Chaos may happen, the camera may fall over. We will all find out together. So cheers, everybody. Here's my little teacup gimmick. Clink, 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 clink. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books to talk to you about, plus a picture book, which I will grab momentarily. So go and get yourself a nice hot drink, or I hope to accompany you with your chores if that is how you like to watch my videos. Anyway, I hope I can do all of these books justice, but we'll see how much my brain can remember. The first book that I read, the first book I completed in October, this is a reread. It is The Skull by John Classon. It is sort of a cross between a chapter book and a picture book. It's quite a thick picture book, but it has, there are pages where it's got 2 lines on it, and then there are pages where there's, in quite big font, about 12 lines on it, but there's illustrations on every single page. So it's not done in the same size as a picture book. It is like an A5 size book, but it definitely gives me all of the October spooky Halloween vibes. And it hasn't paused. Sorry, I was trying to pause the video because I heard my son coming upstairs, like they always do as soon as you've got them settled and you're like, I'm ready to do this video. And at the same time, the camera was sliding and falling. Anyway, fail. Right, back to The Skull. So I really wanted to reread this one because it just, it's a retelling of a folk tale. I've forgotten, Tyrolean. I think I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but it's a Tyrolean folktale retelling. And it is about this girl called Attilia, and she is running away. She goes through the woods, finds this house with this skull inside. And it's a story of bravery, and it's a story of friendship. And the colour palette in the illustrations is lots of different shades of like black and grey and orange and brown, and it's amazing how you get sort of like a cold feeling with this, but also a warm feeling with it, depending how it's all done. And you have this kind of like pink blush of light throughout it as well. So I really enjoy the illustrations, I really enjoy the story, and I really enjoy the atmosphere that is created in this book. So it was lovely to revisit that. Next, I have a book that I started reading in September and didn't really manage to finish in September, and it is Greenwild by Parry Thompson. So this is the first book in Parry Thompson's fantasy series. It's her debut. It's Greenwild, The World Behind the Door is its full title. It is a middle grade portal fantasy, and it came third in the middle grade Readers' Choice Awards in 2023. I was given this arc by the fabulous Book Nook, which is a local independent bookshop near me. And when I went in, they were like, "Oh, do you like arcs?" And they gave me 3. So and this was one of them, which was absolutely thrilling. I am lucky enough to have the illustrated map on the other side of the cover, which is delightful. And my Mad March Hare chose for my mum the hardback fully printed version of this with the map on the end pages, which is absolutely gorgeous. Also has sprayed edges as well. And when I was actually reading this when I was up in Lincoln, And I was also looking at her copy as well, and there were a couple of things where there was some slight editorial changes that I noticed, and also in her version you have got much more detailed illustrations by Alicia Panganelli. So for example, this picture here of Daisy with her mum talking about her mum's job, it's very like light pencil sketches, and you've got different shades of grey with the artwork. In the finished one, it is much clearer. Daisy's hair is much darker. Everything is a lot more defined. This is just like very basic sketches in here. So I found that really fun to be comparing and contrasting the two. But the gist of the story is the same. And it is what I love in middle grade fantasy. There's so much gorgeous whimsy in there. It's such a delightful world that Daisy finds herself in. The lead up to that, there was definitely a sense of danger, definitely a sense of adults who are in charge of Daisy that probably do not have the best intentions, which I think just adds another kind of anxiety level within middle grade. And definitely myself as an adult reading this adds a level of anger towards those who do not have the best intentions for the people they are looking after. We also meet some fantastic extra characters in here. We have Daisy's adopted cat, Napoleon. We have a whole sort of found family crew of kids that she meets in Greenwild. And it's a lot of learning about that place, learning new skills, and sort of building on these friendships. On top of that, we've got Daisy's relationship with her mum. Her mum is missing, and Daisy sort of trying to work out how all of that came into being. There is a slight theme in here about immigration and asylum seeking in a way, because going to Greenwild when you haven't lived there originally, you are sort of claiming asylum, claiming a space there, claiming safety there. So I thought that was a really interesting way of kind of reflecting our attitudes in this world within the sort of like the more of the safety of the fantasy world. There are some twists and turns in here. There is some interesting history, and I enjoyed every moment of it. It was really heartfelt. It was really magical. You root for Daisy, you root for the characters, and I cannot wait to read the second book in the series. I have mentioned before, if you've previously been on my channel, I am very much a seasonal reader. I love to feel the right time and space for a book, and I just have more of a mood for cold wintry books in the winter and warmer books in the summer. So autumn, I really just felt the need for sort of more mysterious books, ones that kind of gave the sort of spooky or creepy feels, but with kind of a cozy centre as well. And I really wanted to read Lucy Strange's new book, The Island at the Edge of Night. So this is a gothic thriller, and I just loved it. Again, Lucy Strange's writing just really sucks you into the story. She's really atmospherical. You really kind of immerse yourself in the place that she takes you to. And again, it was another adventure of a child having to go to a place they don't really want to be in, and they are under the care of adults that seem a bit dodgy. We also have this extra kind of side where I've totally forgot Faye. So our protagonist is called Faye. She is leaving her aunt and her father. Her father clearly is showing signs of suffering from mental health, and there's something wrong with her aunt, but you don't know what it is. And Daisy is Faye is suffering from amnesia. She feels she's done something really wrong and she can't work out what it is. So she's dealing with all of that. And then she goes to this very remote island to this boarding school where troubled children or wicked children are supposed to be to grow better into better model citizens. and she encounters some other children there, and they start to be highly suspicious about what the adults are planning, and you get to learn more about the characters. And again, you have this found family, you have this mystery, there is definitely a sinister sensation, there is also kind of a wild beauty and feeling to it as well, and it was just absolutely what I wanted from this book, and it was really delightful. Okay, going on to actually an adult book now, one that's not a middle grade. I felt, having enjoyed all of that coziness, I felt ready to move on to a book that I felt was going to be more challenging for me. And that is Three Apples Fell from the Sky by Noreen Abgarian. So this is one of the Shelterbox book club picks that I got sent. Well, no, it's part of my subscription service, so I was sent it, but I chose for it to be sent to me. So I have this project that I'm doing where I wanted to read all of my book box books from 2022. I started it in 2023 and I'm still going, so I will get there. I will get there in my time. So this one was one of the ones that I wasn't sure whether or not it would be for me. And I'm still not completely 100% on that. So the first chapter I really enjoyed. I was intrigued by the protagonist. I thought it was quite quirky and funny. And I was interested in where the story was going to go. Then you very much were given lots of history of the different people who lived in this town. Tiny village of Moran, nestled high in the Armenian mountains. So it's this mountain village. It's this very kind of close-knit village life. There's not a huge amount of people kind of coming and going from this. So all the characters have lived in the village for a long time. You get to hear about their backgrounds, their ancestors' backgrounds. There is a lot of, that is why they are called this, explanation. And that's not my favourite. I very much enjoy being in the present moment. For most, I don't mind a little bit of referring to the past, but it felt like huge chapters were like referring to the past and then the past of this character, and then it was almost like a character summary, which didn't quite work for me. There are sort of three parts to this story, focusing on different parts in the village, but kind of comes back to the original protagonist at the end again. There were moments in here where there were things that I was like, oh, that's actually really sweet. That's actually really nice. So there was some heartwarming moments in here. But I very much fluctuated between starting to care about the characters, but then being put at a distance because of the stylistic choices of the book. I think it's just not one of those that gelled with me. I really like to kind of get involved and get that emotional connection, and that happens much more if I'm reading it like in the present, if I'm living, breathing, sleeping, sweating alongside the characters, which is why I do tend to go for a lot more of thicker, slow burn, epic books, because that kind of suits my vibe a bit more. But there was definitely a heartwarmingness to this story. Just the stylistic kind of put me at a distance with it. So I'm not completely 100% sure what I think about this one. I'll have to do a bit of soul searching when I kind of reflect on all the books once I've got through them. So we will see. And that's incredibly vague, but I feel that's as much as I can say on this one. I then have on the other side, sorry, this has gathered some dust. I'm just going to, I really need to dust my books. I think that says they've been sat there for a while. Whoops-a-daisy. So the other book subscription box is Fairy Loot. So I was also going through my 2022 Fairy Loot books. I have been quite excited about this one for a while. This is Blood Scion by Deborah Fillet. And I'm going to take the dust jacket off because you can just appreciate the artwork without the writing on the front, which I think just makes it much more striking. I just find this really beautiful. We have our protagonist. She's got sort of blue swirl sort of around her face. Her hair has got these beautiful, like, I'm sure there is a term for these shells, and it probably said it in there that I've totally forgotten, but they are small white shells. and they are like threaded through, I don't know if it's like a headpiece or if they're threaded around her braids, but it's really, really striking. And she has got on like an army jacket, and we've got like red fiery smoke kind of destruction around her. So the premise of this is that those who have got like, I'm not going to use all the terminology, but essentially those who have got God's blood within them, or have some sort of descendant of the gods within them, are basically taken and killed by the Empire. So there's been a invading force from 300 years ago. There is then propaganda that the invading force was saving the country from the previous rulers. So her culture has basically been destroyed and wiped out. She's trying to hide her true identity. They will use family members kind of against you. And there is also a conscription of children from the land to join their army when they get to a certain age. Deborah Fillet does kind of stay at the front of this book. She gives trigger warnings and explains, like, you know, it is inspired by real life horrors of child soldiers, and tackles themes of war, violence and sexual assault, and advises you to read with care. I definitely echo that. There is a lot of graphic violence in here, graphic sexual assault in here. It's very harrowing. However, you kind of got to a point in this book where you felt so oppressed that you were no longer surprised when things were harrowing. I liked the idea and intention of where it was going. I just found it hard to go through it in the setting of a YA book, because it's one of those things that feels like I need it to be explored at a slower pace. Or maybe my preference is just for a slower pace, I don't know. But I think because it went so dark and it went so into mixtures of emotional trauma as well as physical trauma in here, that the breakout from that oppression, I needed it to be more believable. I was like, you've just been beaten within an inch of your life. How are you then able to get up and keep going? Like, maybe it's just because I've had a very cushy lifestyle and I don't understand that is possibly possible. But I just found it less believable. It felt too superhero-y, I suppose, in a way. Like, I know there is an aspect of her that has like godly powers, but I still kind of struggled with that. I think more with the emotional trauma than anything else. Like, your mind must be struggling and broken. And there were moments when this was kind of hinted at, but then like it just felt like there was a sort of a quick recovery time and a quick pace. And I think it's very much more the plot needed to kind of propel us along rather than us having time with these characters to kind of sit with them and allow things that have happened for them to take it in, I suppose. There are different kind of feelings between different, that's the wrong word, I suppose different stances on life, different philosophies is possibly the word I want. Different attitudes, different ways of coping within a terrible situation that I would have enjoyed kind of sitting with and having the characters explore and discuss a bit more, and feel those like friendships formed more strongly, and like turns in certain things got around. And there are events that happen in here that I struggled with, and you could also see, and I was just like, oh, that was kind of glossed over a little quickly for the character, but then it does kind of refer back to it, but again, not as much. Like, I felt there were certain actions or beats of the plot where I felt the character our protagonist didn't really focus and think on them. Maybe it's because she's putting up mental barricades to survive, but it was, as a reader, it's hard to kind of get into the skin of the character when they are putting up defensive blocks or not reacting with a huge amount of emotion to things that happen. I think if you are very much a plot-based reader and you enjoy twists and turns of stories and you enjoy military settings and trials and combat, and you don't mind really kind of grimdark, this is very much a grimdark YA, I would say, aspects to things, then you probably get on really well with this. I just felt to appreciate it more, I needed more light and shade. I felt we were constantly oppressed throughout it. There weren't that many moments of characters just kind of being themselves, and I enjoy kind of the daily grind. I enjoy feeling the hearing about sort of like the day-to-day tasks of how it goes, so you get a sense of what it's like. It's just everything seemed big in here, and I think when everything feels like a big event, you kind of lose sight. It's just everything's big, everything's dramatic, and it doesn't kind of propel you towards a high or a stress or anything like that, because everything's at stake all the time. So I kind of struggled with it from that aspect. There was a section in here that I couldn't read. And I felt that situation happened because we needed the character to feel a certain way or reach a certain conclusion or get to a certain point, but we didn't really get that. That didn't seem to show anything other than, look how much these people are going to try and push you, look how much you've got to break through and keep going from to be strong. And we've already done that. We've already had things that have proven that point. This just felt like too extreme, or like so extreme. I thought this makes sense if it's to really go in and break completely or something, but there didn't seem to be anything beyond what was already happening for this character. It just seemed to be more of the same. So it kind of felt like, let's continue to show how awful this situation is by making this really emotionally traumatic thing happen. And I just felt it was unnecessary. I just felt it was more like shock value, like kind of like pain value. I didn't feel it had a purpose to that character in terms of their emotional journey or their character arc. So it just didn't really work for me, because I wanted more of a slower pace. I wanted time to breathe with the characters. I wanted us to think and feel about the consequences of certain things and to get more of an emotional reaction from them. And I didn't get that from this book. It felt too much of the story going ahead too quickly. But I saw what she was trying to do. I've heard people raving about this and really loving this book. So do go and look for other reviews on it to see whether or not you feel it's for you. Because I think it's really dark but kind of important subject matter. I just think it would have been stronger if we could have had a slower pace for it to really kind of pick up on those beats and moments within it. So reading those two books together was quite hard. It was very dark, and there was moments when I was reading the previous book, Three Apples Fell from the Tree, I was just like, should I just DNF this? I'm not gripped, I'm not intrigued, I don't really want to carry on. But that was before I got to the bit where I was like, oh, I do feel like I'm getting more of an emotional connection to the characters now. But then it would disappear again. So that was kind of a tough part of the month, like I was reading those two books together. And I was like, I am struggling. But luckily, along came a book to like heal me and make me feel well again. And that is a book that I buddy read with the fabulous Tiffany from Towering TBR, and it is Hamra and the Jungle of Memories by Hannah Alcaff. And this book was joint fourth, along with The Witchstone Ghost, in the Middle Grade Readers' Choice Awards 2023. So this was one of the ones that I voted for, and I'm really, really excited to read, just because of how much Tiffany raved about another book that Hannah Alcaff wrote, which was The Girl and the Ghost. So this book is a Malaysian set Red Riding Hood inspired folktale. And what I love so much about this is so many things. First of all, Hannah Alcaff's writing is so evocative of the fairy tale feeling, of pulling these characters into your heart, of creating this gorgeous atmosphere, and the language that she uses and the way she tells the story and the themes she weaves throughout it are excellent. There was a moment, and I was talking to Tiffany, I was like, I am slightly concerned that one of the themes that's being tackled is going to be like magically dealt with, which I feel is going to be kind of detrimental to people who really need to have a more realistic approach to this story. But we trusted in Hannah Alcoff, and Hannah Alcoff delivered perfectly. There is a huge just repeated myself twice and I'm still struggling to form the words, theme of memories in this book, and how it feels to kind of lose parts of yourself. So it tackles things like dementia in here. It tackles like a sense of identity. It tackles friendship. It tackles being self-aware and sometimes asking for help when you need it. So there were some lovely character arcs in here from all of the characters. You have an unlikely trio going on a sort of quest. The setup of the story worked really well. The folktale feelings, the stories all kind of came through. I just can't praise this book highly enough. It was such a fantastic read, and I will be reading everything that Hannah Alcoff writes because she's incredible. And I think this is one of these, it's absolutely one of these middle grade books where adults will definitely enjoy it. It's just so beautifully done, and I do highly recommend it for anyone who has family members or someone close to them who is struggling with dementia. I then have a classic. I read one of the short stories from this book. There are, how many have we got? More than I can count off the top of my head. 12. So there were 12 stories in here. This is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. I have got the Chiltern Classic, which was a gift from my mum. It's got very gorgeous peacock metallic feathers on the front, and we've got gold edging, and it feels like very nice and heavy sort of in your hand. And the pages are really, really thick. So the story I read was the first one in this book, which was A Scandal in Bohemia. It did make me smile a couple of times just because I'm aware I'm reading a classic, but there was language in here that I was just like, I just had to like poke my husband in the back and go, I'm just going to read you something. This is what I think about this, which just made me smile. Just some like general statements about women. But that in mind, I did enjoy the direction the story went in. I thought it was fun. It was a nice introduction to me, for me. I have not read a Sherlock Holmes book before, so I'm going to try and read one of these stories each month and kind of going through them. And one of the reasons for this is this was one of the prompts for Victober to read a Sherlock Holmes book, because we lost our amazing fellow booktuber Alice, who was such a gorgeous person, and Sherlock Holmes was one of her favourite. So in memory of her, in dedication to her, keeping the love of these stories alive for her, it was a recommendation from the wonderful Katie and crew at Books and Things with Victober to read books based on two booktubers that we lost this year. And as I was lucky enough to meet Alice, I definitely wanted to read one of the Sherlock Holmes stories. So that was really nice to be able to do that. I'm just losing my voice. I'm going to go get some water. Right, that's better. Talking a lot. I haven't really been drinking a lot, which is not a good sign. Actually, no, I'm going to talk about this book. I did say I've got a picture book as well. So I also read Granny Came Here on the Empire Windrush, which is by Patricia Lawrence, and illustrated by Camilla Sucre. I really love the illustrations in here. They just they're very warm. So you've got lots of like oranges in the colour palette. All of the style is quite striking and firm and solid. Sounds a bit of a weird thing to say, but it just feels very much definitely there. There is a really nice kind of you can see the relationship on the faces between the grandma and granddaughter, from how they hold themselves. There's lots of kind of like cuddly feelings from these two characters, which is lovely. So this tells a story of Ava and her grandma, and she's talking to her grandma about what person you admire from history or something like that, to dress up as for school and be in this presentation. So they explore some ideas together, and Granny ends up telling her the story of when she came here on the Empire Windrush, and how she found it when she first came to the country, how different it was, and how she coped with that and built a life here. And it's a really lovely story. It's really nice to kind of explore this of explore the histories of other people, and I just think it really comes alive with all the illustrations in this book. So I really enjoyed this one. 2 books left. First of all, I have The 9-Night Mystery by Shana Jackson. This is a middle grade mystery, and I don't read a huge amount of mysteries, but I do very much kind of like feel in the mood for them every now and again. And Shana Jackson really does write very excellent mysteries. I really enjoy her approach to writing mysteries. There's definitely like a logic and a format and an exploration. Their characters come together, they organise their suspects, they organise their clues. It's very systematic, and they refer to it and update it each time they kind of come to that, which was very enjoyable. So with the 9-Night Mystery, I wasn't sure when I first read about it, because it sounded like a child died. Wasn't a child, it was their mum's friend, and they went to their mum's friend's birthday, and then find out the next morning that she is dead. And they decided to investigate what happened. And to do a really good send-off for her, they choose to do a 9-night, which is a traditional Caribbean celebration to ground her soul and help her move on to the next world. So there is a sort of a spiritual element to this book. There is sort of a bit of a ghostly element to it, as well as uncovering what happened. We have lots of mysterious characters, and I really enjoy the way the children kind of work together to explore it all. It feels very realistic in terms of what they're able to do, but you also see like how brave and inventive and determined they are to work out exactly what is going on. The 3 characters in here all have different strengths. I really like them together as a group, and I enjoyed kind of the systematic approach of how it went, and it was really fun. Like at each night, they all had to gather and try and help the soul move on, and what happens on different nights, and how the different characters react to things, and how we learn more about them. So this was really, really enjoyable for me. I also found that I'm very much definitely at the point where you're reading the story and you're like, oh my goodness, I am absolutely the parents in this story rather than the children. Just hearing about all the 90s nostalgia and certain things, and Spice Girl fans, so that is exactly who they are in here. And my final book was an adult epic fantasy, start of a new series, The Magic of the Lost, and it is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. So I didn't quite manage to finish this in October. It did also trickle into November as well, but I read most of it in October, which is why it's in October. And one of the reasons why it had to trickle into November was just because of the reading time that was at my disposal. I was definitely reading where I had to pick up and put down books, rather than being able to sit for longer periods of time and immerse myself in a book, which is what I like to do more with fantasy, because I feel I can get into it more that way. Whereas if I'm kind of putting it down and picking it up again, my brain is kind of flitting. And something happens in this book where I felt like the shit's going to hit the fan. And I am invested in a variety of different people. I don't know what the right thing is. And I'm terrified for our protagonist. And I was like, I have to just pause. Because the next time I pick this book up, I'm going to need to keep reading for a really long time. Because I'm not going to be able to like stop and just leave things in the way they are. So yeah, that's why I had to pause the book. I was also lucky enough to go and meet C.L. Clarke at a Waterstones book signing event, and I have got this book written. Where has she written it? There we go. I've managed to find it. So they signed my book for me. It says, "To Chatty, be the rain." And they also wrote in brackets, "Good luck," because I did tell them I've had to pause your book, and this is why. I love this story. I then since read it. I have since got past that point and managed to finish it all. And I'm pleased I waited and read it in a much wider chunk to kind of get my head around everything. But what this does is what I kind of needed Blood Scion to be doing, where you kind of had breathing space in between battle moments, in between hard moments, to reflect on the emotion of the story and to allow the characters to breathe and to allow the characters to talk to each other. And within that, you do create this emotional connection with them. And I love Terrain. Terrain is fantastic. There's just something really endearing about her, as well as the fact that she's just really badass. She's a soldier. She's a captain. She takes the captain's responsibility, but she's aware of what her weaknesses are as well as her strengths. She's kind of a no-nonsense talker. She hasn't quite got the charm, say, of some of her comrades have, to encourage people to do certain things. But she is tenacious. She is determined. She is persistent. She's also been through a really difficult time for trying to work out who she is and what she stands for and what she does. Like, the exploration in here of colonialism, of identity, of what we call home, of duty, of loyalty, was really fascinatingly explored in here. So you have an empire that is conquering other lands, and they have taken children from those other lands and taken them back to their original country and trained them to fight in their army. So they've raised them, they've educated them. The only kind of real home they've known is in the homeland of the Empire, which is a very different landscape to that of the countries they were originally from. And then they, as in part of the army, they fought for the Empire. Their way of continuing to make their own way in the world is to go up through the ranks of soldiers, but they are all very much made to feel like outsiders. You know, they are part of this army. But the unit in the army that Terrain is captain of is made entirely of these people who have been captured from different parts of the Empire, of countries that the Empire have conquered. And their unit is known as the Sands, and they are looked down upon as being much, much lesser than the regular units in the army. So they're hated by the people who captured them. And then they end up going back. One of the military operations is to try and make peace and put down rebel uprisings in the country. Balladeer, I think, is that how you pronounce it? I can't remember how you pronounce it. I read it in my head all the time, and then, oh no, it's the Empire of Balladeer, Quazal. Khazal is the country that Terrain is originally from. And so they're also hated by the Khazal people, and it's just like trying to work out what is the best way for them to survive, what is the best way for them to feel like they're worth something. Because they've grown up being told they're not as good as other people, but they've been given values of the empire that they've grown up from, and just trying to make things better for them, trying to make a change. But we have a new voice of the empire coming through. We have the heir to the throne. We have Princess Luca, who has been given a task by her uncle, who is essentially the regent, but possibly a contender for the throne. And she needs to make sure that she establishes Beladere's hold on Khazal. And so she's trying to put down the rebellion, but she wants to try and do it her way. She's got these grand ideas of what a good ruler should be like. And so she's playing all of this political game as well and trying to create peace. Then you have the rebels, who definitely do not want Baladere in their country and want to get them out. So you've got all these different factions, and you're like, which way is the best way of trying to keep everyone happy but not create a bloodshed? And there is and it's not an easy option. It's interesting kind of hearing about all the pros and cons from it all. Obviously the answer is don't invade other people's countries. Don't stop being an empire. Obviously that is not going to be a really realistic. That is not gonna it's not a good way to sell the throne. Say, hey, I should definitely be your all-time princess, because you know what, all this land that we've worked for and we think we're awesome at, I'm gonna give it all back. It's not a winning political thing for Princess Luca's country, even though looking at it from a royal standpoint, it's absolutely the thing you should be doing. So you've got all of this politicking going on. You've got these living on a knife edge. There's also this rumours of this magic that has been lost and not known about. It's very mysterious. There's lots of different hostile places within this country. And it's really, really fascinating. And I love how all the themes are explored. I just really enjoyed the caught between a rock and a hard place politicking of working out the best way to try and create a peace within this colonial country. I got really fond of the characters, Terrain especially, but there's some really interesting characters. You might not necessarily be fond of them, but they're very interesting. You're intrigued by them, and it's a lot of fun when they're on the page. I would definitely have probably been killed within minutes. I would not survive in this world. I do not feel Machiavellian enough or bold enough, or enough, I do not know my way around a sword. I'd have to learn how to not be stabbed tactics very fast. But yeah, I love it. I had a brilliant time. I had a brilliant time with this book. It was exactly the kind of thing that I enjoy, with themes and emotional beats and exploring politics, exploring a newly created world, having like bits of lore and history of a magic system and trying to find out all these different things about it. I had a really great time with this book. And that is everything I read in October. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts on any of these books, do please chat with me in the comments. If you want to share any of the books that you have been reading, I would love to hear about that. Or if you have any recommendations for me, that would be great to hear about too, because I love a book to read. And I love a chat. Happy reading, everyone.